And at the end of the day, the best retailers, the best executives I know, they know that not only is turnover expensive because of how much it costs to hire a new employee, but that's not even the most important part. That someone that's worked there for 6 months, 8 months, 12 months, 2 or 3 years, that person has figured out how to service a customer.
You're listening to Retail Remix, your inside access to candid conversations with the people shaping retail's future. Here's your host, Alicia Esposito.
At Retail Touchpoints, we've been covering a lot on employee empowerment. Of course, that applies to HQ as well, but the most fascinating area, in my opinion, is associate empowerment and how retailers can close the gap between what's happening at headquarters and at the corporate level with what's happening at the store level. Because we've been hearing time and time again from C-level leaders that they are focusing on creating a stellar and memorable in-store experience. But the reality is, if your employees aren't equipped and empowered to provide that level of experience, well, all of your talk is all for naught, right? So for today's episode, I wanted to sit down with someone who is not just shaping the tech side of the industry, but also retailers themselves. Will Eadie, Chief Revenue Officer at WorkJam, knows the meaning of employee experience, or EX. In fact, WorkJam does a lot of work in this area and really knows firsthand how EX impacts CX. So we dig into that, and we also explore how retailers like JCPenney are investing in EX effectively. Listen in, because I think you'll be surprised how pragmatic, for lack of a better word, this conversation is. It's easy to get lost in the exciting and innovative tech, even buzzy tech, that is taking the industry by storm. But Will has a way of really breaking down the solutions that are available now, and also the work that retailers can do now to empower and engage their workforce. Will, thanks so much for being on the show. It's great to have you on.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and honestly, we are covering so much on this topic of workforce empowerment and workforce engagement. And I feel like you are the right person to have this conversation with, because you have been with WorkJam for a little more than 8 years at this point, right?
I have, yeah.
Okay. Excellent. And before that, you've had a lot of experience in retail tech and specifically workforce tech. So again, the right guy for this conversation today. I'm curious, though, before we get started, I'd like to go into the backstory a little bit so I can understand your context and how you're looking at this topic. I'm curious, again, just looking at your history and your expertise, what about this sector, this area of retail, do you find most interesting and even rewarding? Like, what really drives you in your day-to-day and your career?
It's a great question. Yeah. So I have, by the way, I've been saying I've been in this space for 20 years, but I've been saying that for about 27 years. So yeah, it's been great. And like you said, been in this space a long time. Before joining WorkJam was with what was then Kronos, what is now UKG. Before that with Temposoft. And I got my start in this space with a company called Campbell Software, which was one of the very first ever WFM vendors. Anything I've learned where I actually sound intelligent, I probably learned from Mike Campbell back in the late 90s. What do I love about this space? I often say to people, this is a part of HR tech where we're so lucky to actually get to go see the impact of the programs, the software, the workflows of what we're actually implementing in action, right? You can walk into any retail store, into any hospitality vendor, into any QSR dining, and you can actually interact with the people that are using the software. You can see the problems you're solving either before they're solved or after they're solved in real time. And I think that's fascinating, right? Like, you can't just walk into a manufacturing plant and start asking questions about what's going on the line, or walking into an emergency room. So I think we have this really unique perspective. And I guess personally, someone that worked retail, worked in dining, had an hourly frontline job growing up, I knew exactly what the impact was. So I think that's what excites me. But, getting to see the outcome in real time is just so interesting, and getting to speak to the end user. Very often you don't get to do that.
Yeah, that's a really interesting perspective. And I think the fact that you have that firsthand experience being in the field definitely provides a level of not just expertise, but that empathy and context that's needed to determine what's really necessary, right? In context of what's happening at the trend level and in local stores, local communities. So I do want to make sure we hit on that because I think that's the foundation for this entire conversation, right? And it's the reality that there is a bit of a tug of war happening in stores, a little bit of tension, although, I don't want to say tension per se because that's a bit negative. But I think the reality is, on one hand, we're hearing from the C-suite that their focus is on providing this great customer experience and making the store the star of the customer experience, which is great. A lot of investment going into that in-store journey and in-store experience. However, I feel like this has been a discussion point for years, that the fact that associates don't feel empowered to provide that great experience, whether it's because they don't have the information or they can't prioritize their work effectively. I mean, what is causing this tug of war still, even after all of these years? Because I feel like we've been talking about this for a while. Like, are there any leading reasons why this is still such an unsolved issue in the industry?
It's really a great kind of point to focus on. I mean, one, you started the question by talking about, you talk to the C-suite and they're highly focused on customer experience, and they should be. They have to be, right? I mean, it's the whole reason that they're there, and we have to delight our customers. We have to continue to expand on experiences, and we've seen a lot of that. And so one of the things that I always say is, like, there's been so much focus, rightfully so, put on customer experience the past 25, 30 years, and we've seen the technology of customer experience evolve. And I think that what we don't always pay attention to is the last mile of customer experience is the front line, is the employee experience. So I think people are waking up and connecting the two. I mean, so what's causing some of these, like you said, tensions? And I always actually go back to one of the reasons that Steve Kramer, who's our CEO, talked about founding the company, which is that at the end of the day, if you go speak to a frontline associate, they will often tell you, I have a better experience being a customer of my employer than I do being an employee. And I think that's really interesting. And if you think about that, it's actually because of the focus on customer experience. We have rewards programs. We have highly targeted marketing. We know a lot about our buyers, which means we speak to them in a way that they're going to be interested in. And what I see is the people that are doing this well, that have solved this problem, have actually realized that, and they've turned that lens of customer experience inward and focused it on the employee experience. Because when you start to give those same type of programs and the same type of data insight and all of the workflows and everything you're focusing on for the customer, and you do the same thing for your team members, then you actually get both connecting. So I think every time we add something to the customer experience, we have to make sure, to your point on empowering, does the team members know about it? I won't shame this retailer, but I went into a retail store recently and there was an interesting sign about a sale. And I said, oh, can you tell me a little bit more about this? The sign wasn't completely clear. And the team member said, I got to be honest with you, I came in this morning and they had put that up. I don't even know what it's about. I apologize. Let me go find somebody. So I think if you see there, right, we put a lot of focus. Somebody did a lot of work and said, hey, this sale is going to impact this location, this region, this merchandise mix. But then we didn't train and empower the associate. So you have two things happening there. One, I wasn't frustrated because the associate was super helpful and nice. But you got to get a customer that's like, well, I just wanted to ask a question about this. But that team member now feels like they didn't know what was going on. They couldn't service me, added a step to their day because they had to go find someone. By the way, likely a manager. And I'll get to managers soon. I don't want to get on my soapbox about how we're overburdening managers too early. But if you see right there, we had to empower them. So empowerment takes a lot of forms, right? We empower them to explain things deeper. You said it earlier, we empower them to know when the best time of day is. It's an age-old problem in HR tech and WFM, right? You can build a perfect schedule, but if a tour bus shows up at 2:00 and that was a bunch of time where you had a bunch of non-cell hours set to reset the store, you can't do it. You got to service those customers. You have to make sure the queue doesn't get too long. You got to make sure fitting rooms get refreshed. So being able to get more intelligent about when work gets done during the day and then adding a ton of flexibility to it, I think that's a huge part of this. At the end of the day, the associates delivering that experience in the store, the very first thing I ever learned in retail from a great boss was is, hey, if someone comes up and they're buying a pair of blue socks, that is the point where you have to say to them, this brown belt goes amazing with those blue socks. Because I was trained on it. I was trained on the upsell. I was trained on how to increase basket size and all those things. But at the end of the day, I also took pride when someone would say, oh, that's a great idea. That's going to look great for me and my work tomorrow. That's going to be great for my event. Or now my Father's Day, it's going to be great. Right now, we have coming up on Mother's Day is a great experience. If we haven't trained our frontline associates on what the Mother's Day experience should be, or what our sales are, or what our promotions are, or how when I walk in to buy something for my wife this week for Mother's Day on Sunday, if someone can say to me, hey, I know that you came in for that, but knowing a little, if you can tell me a little bit about what your wife likes, I might be able to steer you over in this direction. I'm super happy. And the associate likely grew basket size. I tie it back to this, and then I'll get off my soapbox, which is the other thing that, we talk a lot about at WorkJam is you got to win hearts and dollars. We got to win the hearts of the frontline associates to get them to want to participate in the program and be great ambassadors for our brands. But if we don't do it in a way that drives productivity, then we're never going to get the ROI approved to actually get this done. So hearts and dollars is how I would sum this up, is how you connect the two.
No, it's great. Definitely a lot to unpack there. But if we were to kind of distill the key pressure points or pain points facing the associates today, I mean, there were a few in there in that last response. So it's the idea that with every new initiative, they're not being properly trained on those initiatives and how to best communicate them. There was mention of just some basic salesmanship, so to speak, that if someone's coming in for X product, now's the time to bring up Y products. Another that we've been hearing so much about is, and I think this ties to your point about, flexibility, but still being able to allocate tasks and prioritize, is that associates in general are just being faced with the reality that they need to do more in their day. And that's largely because of the expansion of omnichannel services and fulfillment capabilities. Like they're picking online orders, they're managing that process. Plus they have to keep a close eye on the contactless checkout or the self-checkout area, plus, right? The list is growing. Are those the fair, checklist, so to speak, of like the major pressure points for associates, or are there any we're missing? Like, I just want to make sure we have the full lay of the land before we start digging into the solutions and how to address this.
I think you nailed it, right? And look, the past 4 years, exacerbated this, especially during COVID, right? We put so much burden on a manager. The manager had to do more with less. They had to train without DMs being able to come to the store. They had to communicate everything that was happening in real time with new initiatives, new trainings. And then you said it, buy online, pick up in store changed everything for the associate. We moved a whole bunch of burden away from a traditional distribution center and moved a distribution center inside of a store, right? And we didn't even talk about ship from store. Anytime you order something today, how often, do you get 3 different boxes because you ordered one outfit and it came from 3 stores? That was 3 different associates that had to touch that single order, and we likely didn't train them on it. I'll give a compliment here, and we are lucky enough to learn from them. But Ulta Beauty has done an amazing job at this over the past 5 to 6 years. When they launched buy online, pick up in store, they trained on it. They figured out how to allocate tasks for it. They figured out what day of the week to do that merchandising better. They empowered the associate to actually take care of the guest, and it really pays off. If you look at the converse, if you go into a store where they've just started doing buy online, pick up in store, this happened to me about 1.5 years ago. I went into a store, and the fantastic frontline team member that I went to pick it up, she said, I'm so sorry. I see your order came across. This was our first day using this new system. I apologize that nobody actually told me how to use it. And she said, I thought we were going to get 5 orders. We've gotten 25 in the first hour. No one told me where the actual merchandise that was picked is going to be put. And I actually don't know how to add any more associates to come in and help me because, you're like the 5th person in line and there's 20 more coming after you. So you see that juxtaposition of the 2 different experiences, an associate that was trained on the process, that was trained on how to answer guest questions, and that was trained on how to execute on it. What's going to happen there is, the Ulta example, that person's walking out, the customer's walking out feeling fulfilled. The associate is going, I just serviced this customer. And despite what we all want to think, that does matter. So you take that positive interaction that an associate had because they knew what he or she was doing, and that's going to be multiplied throughout the day. They're going to continue to be proud of the experience. You get that frustrated associate, and they were very kind to me, but imagine by the 3rd or 4th time they have to have that interaction, they're exasperated. They're going to throw their hands up at some point and say, well, no one's telling me what to do? I can't help here. And then it just becomes this snowball effect. So I think that's the real crux of this, is if you can get ahead of it, and if they want to be empowered, they want to know. And the second piece is they want to understand what your company's all about. I think, the other big pain point is you have a workforce, especially over the past couple of years where we've had unemployment be so low, where they can choose where they work. So flexibility is not just about making sure that they can be flexible with the customer, but flexible for the team member. Can they ask a question? Do they understand the company's policies on social issues that are important to them? Do they understand their benefits, right? That's another thing that I see managers burdened with. These employers have amazing benefits, and then nobody actually tells the frontline team members. So, you see a lot in the news where we're complaining about the nature of frontline work, but so many of the retailers that we work with had amazing benefits. They just needed a platform to be able to get them easily into a team member's hands. So I think it's the old-fashioned adage of it's a game of telephone. If we just expect because something was worked out perfectly in corporate and it's going to make its way down through all the layers of field management to store management to department management and then to the front line without it being broken up, you're never going to have it happen. You've burdened all those people in that line when you could really just create a bi-directional collaboration that gets that information in real time to associates and gets information that headquarters needs to know in real time. Like, hey, this sale isn't working. This product is not what you promised. None of the fixtures showed up. Doing that in real time really takes burden off of them. One of the use cases that I see here all the time is someone does something great at the POS. They've taken 2 steps out of a return, right? That's fantastic. IT team, kudos. What often happens is the IT team forgets to tell whoever's in charge of store training that they did it. And at 9 a.m. when the store opens in New York, someone goes to do a return and the associate doesn't know that there's 2 keystrokes that they don't do anymore and it's messing up the process. Well, if you don't have a way to quickly hear that problem from the store and then fix it, that's going to happen an hour later in Chicago, an hour later in Denver, and then another hour later in California. And you've had this waterfall of an issue that could have been solved if first thing in the morning someone says, hey, POS isn't working properly. Why? And someone goes, oh, well, we changed it. Here's a 2-minute video on how to fix it. You send that out before ever the store opens, and you've saved all the customer hassle, you've saved all the team member hassle, and you've saved hundreds of calls into the store support center. So there's really a lot to happen there.
No, that's great. I know this kind of ties to this broader topic or issue of employee experience or EX. I know that's something that WorkJam talks a lot about. So is there a cut and dry definition of what EX entails? And I think you kind of alluded to how EX impacts CX, right? When associates feel in the know, they feel empowered, they know everything that's happening at all levels of the organization, right? Not just in the store, but at the cultural level, like you were talking about benefits and programs. When they feel more connected and in the know at the business level across the board, that obviously has a trickle down effect, right? And I guess my bigger question for you is how can retailers ensure that those dots connect effectively and that they do invest in EX appropriately so it does lead to a better CX? And if that's a loaded question, let me know, because I know we have a few more questions to get to.
Well, yeah, as you know, I can be quite verbose, so I apologize. So feel free to cut me off. So no, I think it's exactly. So focusing on EX really is what I said earlier. Let's take the same disciplines we've learned from listening on CX and do it to team members. It's very, very simple things. Once we've moved all of our disparate communications off of the multiple platforms that are untenable, like WhatsApp and Facebook groups and text messages and GroupMe's, and we've put them into a collective community or a collective corporate track that, one, has some compliance in it, because the other big thing that creates that tension and detracts from employee experience is when you start having to worry about that I'm getting communications when I'm off the clock or I'm at home and this is my time. That's a big thing, right? And that's something that doesn't actually mean you have to give someone $1 more an hour. We can just be respectful of their time. But let's say we start hearing in a channel of communication where we said, hey, we're really excited to roll out this new device that's going to make it so much easier for you to merchandise the front table as someone walks into the store. And we start hearing chat like, I don't really understand how to use this, or this actually adds a bunch of time. I used to be able to do this in 5 minutes. Now it takes me 8. Imagine getting that kind of data in real time from 500 stores And within a couple of days, being able to fix the process before you've wasted 3 months on this. Because, so that kind of employee experience listening, but also giving team members the ability, we often say we want to hear from you to our frontline team, but that just means like, hey, tell your manager, and then hopefully they email headquarters. That information, it just gets tracked down at the bottom of the funnel and it never makes its way back up top. So employee listening is actually listening to insights and then actioning them. I can tell you the impact that when you get team members that are saying, hey, this process doesn't work for us and it's harder, and you act on that quickly, what happens is this groundswell of people saying, people are listening to us. Or if someone's saying, we don't understand our benefits or we need some benefits, and you're hearing that in real time, the narrative then immediately goes away from, well, they never listened to us. And at the end of the day, the best retailers, the best executives I know, they know that not only is turnover expensive because of how much it costs to hire a new employee, but that's not even the most important part. That someone that's worked there for 6 months, 8 months, 12 months, 2 or 3 years, that person has figured out how to service a customer. So if we can show that we're listening to our best people, we're taking their field level ideas and turning them into corporate policies and practices, you're going to see a groundswell of employees feeling like they are empowered. Wow, they took my idea from my local store and now everyone's doing it that way. And you see other people that want to say, hey, that's what good looks like. I want people to model what I'm doing well and make what I'm doing well good looks like. I think that that's just a huge thing. And then the tie-in is obviously to the CX piece, because when you have customers doing that, when you have team members doing that, treating customers the right way, you empower them to do that. Other people want to mimic it. So one of the most successful things we've done, and I just got back from a week at the Qualtrics X4 conference. Obviously, Qualtrics is the biggest name in CX. We have a really exciting collaboration we've done with them where a lot of our customers are taking a CX survey and tying it to employee action, and vice versa, by the way. But I'll give you an example. Let's say I walk into my favorite retailer and I go there once or twice a month and I'm shopping. And this my third time in a row, I'm like, you know what? The store was really messy today. So I get my receipt and I get my little QR code and I do my Qualtrics survey and I say, I love you. I love the brand. I'm here all the time. But for the past 3 visits, the store has been very messy. Traditionally, that information was going to get read a week later, 2 weeks later, sometimes even a month later. It's not actionable. I'm going to probably come back one more time. And if it's still not fixed, I'm not coming to that store anymore. You're losing that lifetime customer value. But what we've been able to do, and when you hear us talk about tying CX to EX, is the Qualtrics and WorkJam AI is going to immediately read that. And within a minute, we are going to send a chat message directly to that store manager saying, hey, you just got this feedback. And now you are scheduled to refresh that end table at 12:30. We're moving that task up and we're going to have you do it at 10:30 because this information just came in. So when you can tie those two things together, you get the same action that I just talked about with employees. When a customer comes back in, they go, oh my gosh, this has been fixed because I said something. They're now even more brand loyal. And the other piece is if you're listening to the team members and you're hearing that the new process is hard and it's not delighting customers, now that EX listening is tying back to your CX delivery. They're really intertwined. And I think it's where we're going to see this next phase of growth in employee workflows go, which is how do we take data and turn it into really quick action that solves all of our problems that hit brand and emotion and empowerment and all those different things.
I love that. We hear so much about how organizations can use data effectively across the business, whether it's marketing, merchandising, CX, online, right? But I think being able to distill that at the employee level, at the store level is highly valuable. So as WorkJam thinks about building out its solutions, its capabilities, I'm assuming that data plays a big role in that process, right? Because on one hand, you have to listen to the retailer itself at the corporate / C level, but then you have to know what's happening in the stores, right? We just did this whole report on this very topic, which is why I'm so excited to chat with you. And the really big takeaway was that if you want to invest in the right technology, you have to know what's happening in the stores. You can't pigeonhole them into using something that you think looks good on paper or in a PowerPoint presentation because it doesn't have all the nuance and all of the capabilities that are required. it's not going to be used, right? So how does that translate into priorities and investments on the WorkJam side? Like, what are you guys focusing on?
No, yeah, I mean, so we're really lucky, right? We have a huge group of some of the biggest global retailers, and we have a really strong customer advisory board. We have a really strong user conference where so many different people come together and they talk about what's next, and they're driving a roadmap. We also learn from the best customers. So I think you said it, it's using data to make decisions. So there's two big things that I think where I see this whole space of frontline digital tech going, which is using data to give that active insight into action much quicker, but also being able to use data to do better planning, because there's so much information we're gathering when someone does a bunch of tasks, when we see a bunch of people swapping shifts, when we see that when people are trained on something, that we have a higher sell-through of a SKU, that when we let them ask questions, we have a longer retention period. And all those things are coming together in workflows, meaning that gone are the days of just saying, hey, 4 years ago, it was all about, let's get everything into one single super app, right? We hear a lot about app fatigue. That's still true. But now it's like, hey, we can't just put 4 things under one screen and say it's there. We have to make them work together. So everything you're going to see coming is about workflows. We do a survey. Based on someone's answer to that survey, they automatically get enrolled in a training. When they finish that training, they're automatically given a skill and a badge, and they're now qualified to pick up an additional shift. On that shift, there's a task assigned to it based on their skills and certifications and their job transfer set in the WFM. And because they've done that, they've scored a 9 out of 10 points on that task. We say, hey, every time this person works, that's the person we should give the task to. But then how do we take that data and say, hey, whenever we have someone that's been here for more than 6 months that has taken these 3 trainings and works in this type of location, we always have a higher throughput on tasks. We have higher customer sat scores, and we see our same store sales going up. Now we can take that data and look at our universe as a whole and say, well, look, this store that's not doing as well, we only have a 60% completion rate on that training. And the huge thing I think you're going to continue to see coming is taking all this data from frontline tech like WorkJam and sending it back into a workforce management system, right? If you talk about tasks and capacity planning, that's what's next. So we're heavily focused on using data to tell you the best time of day to do a task. We're telling you, hey, don't do this task on Wednesday, even though merchandising wants you to, because you'd have to add a whole bunch of labor. But if you can push the task to Thursday, you already have the labor in the stores to support it. So again, you've done it. It's all about that flexibility piece. And that's really where I think we see this going, especially from a roadmap perspective, but really also from an implementation and change management perspective.
No, that's great. And I do want to dig deeper into that implementation side, because I'm always fascinated by what this process looks like at the company level, right? Like, you select a technology, you roll out the technology, but it's not just build it and they will come, right? It probably takes a lot of time in order to better understand, how users, in this case, store associates, are using this technology, what's missing, what further training needs to be done, what capabilities may be missing. So I'm curious, based on your experience, right, and your conversations with retailers, your clients, your advisory board, et cetera, how can retailers ensure that they go into this journey, implementing technology with the right strategy, the right foundation? Because I feel like there needs to be a very sound plan around how this technology will drive short-term, but also long-term success. Can you kind of break that down for me and even share, maybe what some retailers get wrong about this process, like any red flags or things to call out?
No, sure. So listen, I think it's a great question. Technology is the enabler, but change management and sponsorship is really what makes it thrive, right? So the implementation of something like this is not difficult. You're talking about a SaaS solution that is very user-friendly. I always actually use this example. We were doing it when we were initially doing our rollout with Target Australia. They had a great operator, and I was actually on the project calling up. He said, yes, we can take this into my region. I just want you to send me the end user training guide for it. And one of our project sponsors, he was the COO. He was fantastic. He said, awesome, send me the training manual for Facebook, and I'll send you the one for WorkJam. And she said, well, there isn't a training manual for Facebook. And he said, exactly. And it was just the best answer I'd ever heard. Because if the technology is easy and intuitive to use, then it takes a lot of that change management away. The change management is actually just saying, hey, let's not pave over cow pastures, right? So many people want to come in and do a frontline digital workplace. They want to take tasks off paper and digitize it. They want to take employee self-service off the manager doing it manually and digitize it. They want to take training off of watching something in a back room or doing train the trainer and digitize it. That's all well and good. But if you haven't thought about what the process is for that, and that we're going to change processes. I mean, one of the things we hear often is, well, that's not how we do it. I know, but this is how you should do it going forward because this is the new best practice. So I'll give you a great example. So I think a lot of people heard Andre Joyner, who's the CHRO of JCPenney, speak with Steve Kramer, our CEO, and we talked a lot about flexibility today. Andre said, our whole point of doing something for the associates was to drive flexibility. So why was it successful? Was one, it was a great partnership between JCPenney and WorkJam, but it was successful because Andre, sitting from the C-suite, had his vision for what he wanted to enact, and he put the team together to do it. It didn't have to be a big team. This is not heavy lift, right? He needed IT to make sure that some integrations were done quickly. He needed some folks from the change management team and some folks from the operations team to make sure that we knew what our associates wanted and needed, and then how they had been successful rolling things out to stores. But it was really sponsorship. And at the end of the day, somebody in your organization, that when you want to do this, they're going to have to stand up and say, I want to do this, and you're going to have our full support. Because what you are talking about, I think we've moved into a really interesting time where things aren't happening in retailers and silos. You used to see HR owned this and IT owned this and operations owned this. When you're talking about doing something for flexibility for the front line, all those groups have to own it. HR has to own it. Operations has to own it. IT has to own it, because you're all coming together collectively. It's not taking every day, all day. It's just a committee that has to meet. So what you have to start thinking about is, why was JCPenney successful? Andre talked about, hey, we wanted to offer flexible scheduling. We wanted people to be able to pick their own shifts, trade shifts easily. They also wanted to be able to offer earned wage access. This goes back to the first question about tensions. Imagine being able to give somebody who just got a flat tire yesterday and can't wait the next 10 days for their paycheck without having to do a payday loan, which is just predatory, but being able to take their earned wage access that day and get $50 to pay to get the tire done. That's flexibility. Flexibility comes in so many forms, but it's still added flexibility for JCPenney to affect their labor model in a more positive way. And JCPenney is a great example now. Everything that Mark Rosin and Andre Joyner and the team are doing at JCPenney, you see their success every day. This is a company that is making a grand comeback and really turning retail on its head. And I think one of the things that always matters is results, right? So Andre shared that their internal referrals for open positions went up 76% when they started offering that. Now, again, I'm not saying that's all because of WorkJam, right? We were simply a technology that enabled the program that Andre had in his head. But what really mattered was associates. The reason referrals go up 76% was, again, not just because of technology. It was because all of a sudden, I'm like, hey, JCPenney is an easy place to work. So when I'm at a party on Friday night and I hear someone looking for a job, I go, oh, you should come work with me. We can get paid the same day we work. I can pick my schedule. I can swap really easily. I get communications every day about celebrations for the month. I understand the ethos of what JCPenney stands for. I love where I work. If you tie it all back together, you know what we just delivered to that employee? The same thing we've been striving to deliver to customers, a reason to talk about the brand. So when you do that, that's where the results happen. So that's a positive. Where have I seen it fail is when you think, hey, I can just take that bulletin board that I have in we all have in every employee break room that has the OSHA notices on it, but has the employee of the month and like one or two scribbled notes where someone says, I need next week off. If you're just trying to say, I want to take a picture of that and put it in an app, that's not a process, right? You have to have an idea of what you want to do monthly, weekly, daily. Across all of WorkJam's platform, we have around an 87% weekly active user. That's really high. And why is that important? Because if you think there's ROI in your team members knowing what you want them to do, believing in a program, taking training, they have to do it. They have to come there. They have to come there because they want to see their schedule. They want to see their pay slip. They want to get earned wage access. They want to swap a schedule. But they're going to stay to hear you talk about the new customer promotion, to learn the new training program, to do the tasks properly. So if you're just trying to, again, take a picture of the back office bulletin board and say, hey, here it is, but now it's in your hand, that's not a program. And that goes back to my earlier comment. You're just paving over a cow pasture. You're not creating a new path.
Yeah, that's great. And it makes me wonder, too, like how this whole landscape is going to continue to evolve. I mean, obviously, there are retailers like JCPenney that are really, really investing in the appropriate measures for successful employee engagement, employee satisfaction, but also employee empowerment, right? And, it's interesting to hear your perspectives because it really shows how connected all of this is. But of course, in this industry, there are always new tools, new technologies that tend to get a lot of hype, right? Like they are either glitzy or, promise to be the next era of or the new generation of, right? And that's all well and good. It's all very exciting, but it seems like, a lot of retailers are very much focusing on the fundamentals of good retailing, which is good. So I guess my question for you is, how do you see this technology landscape evolving? Because I guess, as we think about the store, technology can kind of have a few different layers. It's the associate empowerment side, like where associates are the main users. And then we've covered in-store tech that kind of indirectly serves employees. So like kiosks or interactive digital signage that are maybe more customer facing, but also give associates the power to step away or do more assisted selling. A few nuances happening in this ecosystem, right? So how do you see it evolving? How do you see retailers thinking about investing in this type of technology moving forward? Because there are a lot of different dynamics at play right now.
Well, I think you teed that up great, right? So everything we see with the in-store technology landscape, we've seen it for the past 9 to 10 years, and it's evolving at a more rapid pace. How do we unlock our associates from a desk? And for a desk, I mean the POS or the back room. So I think it's what you see with POS and queue busting. We're moving POS out onto the floor. It's also what I talked about earlier with app fatigue. We can't if we're adding a new process, we can't add a new app. We have to try and deliver everything through a single digital doorway, through a digital frontline workplace. And then I think the other big thing you're going to see, and it goes with assisted selling, all those, is AI. I think AI is going to be amazing. It's been overhyped, and I think people are using it in a lot of the wrong ways. We've taken a very enterprise approach to AI, where we've had AI in our target audience engine since day one. And what does that mean? It means that when I earn that training and that badge, I'm automatically entered into a community. And when someone needs to send a message to a very specific criteria, our AI target audience says, hey, here's the 5,000 people that should receive this message, and we can tell you in 2 seconds, as opposed to traditionally taking 3 days for someone to get that criteria. But AI for the associate is going to be one of the reasons I talk about the enterprise approach. Is you see a lot of vendors out there like, oh, we put an AI chatbot in, or we let you search our app with AI. Sure, we all do that. But if that search is combined just to the app for the process that's functioning on, it's not going to help. Like if I go into a WorkJam chatbot and I say, it needs to be able to say, hey, how do I change the POS register tape? Well, if you're just talking about what information lived inside WorkJam, you're not going to get that. It needs to be able to go search the knowledge center of where that information is stored. AI needs to be able to recommend when that task should be done. So I think you're going to see AI help with that listening and decision support. What at the end of the day, I think what we want to be able to hand is both our in-store associates and our field level managers, what I call the GPS, right? Based on data that I'm getting, actions that have been happening in the system, do I turn right or left out of the driveway today? And this goes, come full circle on what I talked about on active listening. If I hear a bunch of team members that they're saying every time my manager, John, is here, we get nothing done, and I've heard that 3 days in a row, as a district manager, I know to turn left out of my driveway today. I got to go have a coaching session with John, right? And I think that's what you're going to see. Same thing in the store, right? Hey, people that have taken these training classes have picked up more shifts. Do you want to take this training class? So we're starting to recommend those types of things. That's what we're going to see. But I think you're going to see a consolidation where processes in the background grow, but where you action those processes comes down to fewer and fewer apps with a lot of workflows being built in to automate. We can't add to the admin burden of the manager or of the person at corporate responsible for maintaining the solution. We have to make the admin of everything easier. So I think that's what you're going to continue to see.
Oh, that's great. Well, this has been a very fascinating conversation just to hear from someone who is doing the work, speaking with retailers, and have seen some really great success stories emerge like that with JCPenney, which was, really insightful. To close out, do you have any final words of advice that you would share with the listeners who are maybe thinking about this right now? And that's why they're listening to this podcast, right? I mean, they are maybe faced with improving employee retention, employee engagement, but maybe don't know how to best navigate this tech landscape and figure out where to prioritize and how to focus. Do you have any closing words of wisdom for them as they go on this process?
Yeah, here's what I would challenge them to do. Don't be scared, right? We talked a lot about listening today, and that scares a lot of people. Oh, I'm scared of what I'm going to hear. I would tell you, you should be more scared of what you're not hearing or not hearing it, because it's compounding the problem daily. And I think at the end of the day, I think a lot of people think this is a huge lift. We talked about a lot of things: task, comms, training, employee self-service, flexible scheduling. You don't have to bite the whole apple off at once. When you go down this process, you can say, what's my main pain point? I need to communicate. Great, that's where you start. This whole thing is a maturity curve. So the most important advice I give to people is you don't have to do all 5 pillars at once, but you have to do one. But what you do have to think about is whatever you choose. So if you're choosing a task solution, a comm solution, a flexible scheduling solution, a learning solution, you are making a decision on frontline tech for the next 4 to 5 years. So you want to make that decision to make sure that maturity curve, you can grow with it. So today it's comms, but in 6 months it's going to be training, and in 12 months it's going to be task. How do you work with somebody that can do it all in that single app and take you to that one place? So my advice would be, don't be scared, but get moving with the first step. The first step is the hardest. The second gets way easier.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again so much for taking the time out. Really appreciate the level of insights you shared. And of course, the very pragmatic advice, because I think it's so easy for we in the industry to get lost in the hype cycle and really try to be a little too, I guess, cutting edge and too out of bounds with what can be done or should be done. I think, you kind of outlined some really realistic goals, expectations, but also how to get the job done, which I think is really ultimately what everyone listening to this wants to do, wants to accomplish. So thank you again so much for taking the time out.
No, thank you for having me. This was a fantastic conversation.
And to all of you who are listening and may have some follow-up questions, obviously we'd love to hear from you. Drop us a line on LinkedIn at Retail Touchpoints, on X at Our Touchpoints. We'll be sure to tag Will and his team at WorkJam, again, just so this conversation can keep going, because that's how innovation happens, right? We share ideas, we ask questions, and we really get to the heart of how to make some meaningful change in the industry. And of course, we'd love to hear your thoughts on this episode and the show in general. So leave us a rating or review on your preferred podcast player. We are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, frankly, anywhere else. We are likely there as well. Again, we'd love to hear your thoughts and how we can improve, and even some ideas on who you want to hear on the show. And while you're there, be sure to subscribe, because we have new episodes coming to you weekly where we're interviewing experts like Will in the industry on the topics and trends shaping retail's future. But for now, that's it from us, everyone. Thanks again so much for joining us. We will see you next time. Thanks for listening to this episode of Retail Remix. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can find us on your favorite podcast player. Until next time, keep mixing it up.